Welcome to this special edition of the AppDevANGLE, coming to you live from the Open Source Summit North America 2025. My name is Paul Nashawaty, covering the app dev space and all things open source. I'm joined by Kat. Kat, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Great to have you on.
I am so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and the company and what you do?
Sure, so my name is Kat Cosgrove. I am the head of developer advocacy at Minimus. I also am the Kubernetes release team subproject owner and a tech lead for SIG Docs, also for Kubernetes.
Super exciting times, right? I mean, especially at this event, right? So what's new? We're at Open Source Summit. What's happening here?
So much is happening here, actually. This is pretty big for an open source summit this year.
Yeah,
everybody who matters is here. It's usually pretty typical for open source summit. It's a very tech leadership-y, elbow-rubby type of event, especially since there are so many side events about running an OSPO or open source security, which is where I work specifically, but also a bunch of the other Kubernetes maintainers are here, and pretty much our entire governance structure is here.
Well, that's cool. It's a good event for you all to kind of connect and talk about what's coming up next. And
we're running like a globally distributed team, right? That has its challenges. We have, of course, real-time communication through stuff like Slack, and we have regular meetings, but it's important for us to be able to all actually get together in person, and the only times we really do that are this and KubeCon.
Well, let's talk about the Kubernetes SIG, right? I mean, we look at the Kubernetes release cycle, right? It's there's a lot to kind of unpack there. Why don't we just start there? Yeah.
So Kubernetes releases 3 times a year. It used to release 4 times a year, but doing that was a little too stressful, so we dropped it to 3. The release team is run by SIG Release. SIG stands for Special Interest Group. Kubernetes as a project is made up of a bunch of SIGs that either own areas of code or they own horizontally spanning across all code areas, something like technical documentation or security or the release process. The release process lasts about 4 months and takes 25 to 30 people to make it happen. So it's a
big program.
It's a big program. It's quite a lot of wrangling to do. Structurally, it's made up of me, the sub-project owner, so everybody in the release ultimately has to report to me. Then a release lead who handles the day-to-day management of the Kubernetes release cycle, and then 4 sub-teams. The enhancement sub-team is responsible for collecting new features or updates to features in Kubernetes and making sure that their KEPs, the Kubernetes enhancement proposals, have all of the things they need to be included. So technical documentation, if there is a user-facing change, production readiness review, that kind of stuff. The release docs team is responsible for wrangling all of that documentation. We don't write the documentation, we make our engineers write their own documentation. The Kubernetes project actually does not allow features with user-facing changes that aren't documented.
Yeah,
so
which makes sense,
which is great, but I wish more projects would do that. I wish more paid products would do that.
Right,
shouldn't be having completely undocumented features, right?
Wait, do you think AI will help with that, with creating documentation around that? No.
Yeah, I have a pretty strong opinion on that.
Yeah, that's great.
And so does SIG Docs.
Okay.
I can't speak for leadership for SIG Docs because I am a technical lead, not a chair for SIG Docs, but we don't allow AI-generated documentation in the project.
That's fair. Why not? Just out of curiosity.
It's just not as effective.
It
is not good enough. I see use within the Kubernetes project for AI with reducing toil. So things like automatically applying labels for us, automatically triaging issues or PRs for us, because that is a lot of toil, especially within the release team. There is a lot of little stuff like that, making sure a PR has the right milestone label on it, or making sure that a documentation PR is correctly labeled as being in English, or a PR to the website being tagged for web development or localization or whatever. That kind of thing I think AI could help us with, but writing technical documentation, not really.
Sure.
We don't enforce things like self-documenting code or whatever. Maybe enforcement of the style guide could be helpful, but so far we haven't seen a tool that does that effectively for us.
So it's a grind. You kind of get through it, right?
Yeah, it's a grind, and there are so many people we have to wrangle in the process of a release cycle. It's 25, 30 people wrangling hundreds of contributors.
So let's talk about that, because I mean, when you think about it, Kubernetes is what, 10, 11 years old now, right?
10, yeah.
10 years, going on 11.
It'll be 11 in July,
yeah. Going on 11, right? So we're going on 11 years old, and the growth of it has been substantial, right? I mean, from just, being a decade old, that's a lot of growth.
It is.
And you said you're lot of wrangling going on, right?
Yes.
You know, so there's a lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts, a lot
So
of
many.
challenges. How do you rationalize all that?
With the release team, it's we have a lot of latitude to enforce decisions.
Yeah.
Anybody in the project during the course of a release cycle, especially as we get close to the actual release, ultimately has to work on our timeline and comply with our decisions, unless we get overruled by steering or whatever. But we have a lot of latitude to make choices on our own based on the experience we have. I've been involved in the project myself for 5 years or so, and in the release team actively for 4.5 of those. So I have quite significant experience working on the release specifically, but also significant experience working with all of the leaders of the other SIGs.
Yeah.
So if my release lead can't make a decision on their own, they know that they can come to me and I will be more than happy to make that decision for them or help guide them in the direction of that decision. But it is a lot of, sometimes we have to bend the rules.
Sure, of course.
Like sometimes we can't bend the rules.
That's called
really
being agile.
we could. Yes, we have to be agile, and we do consider the release date to be a moving target.
Sure.
So we will give you a release date when we start the cycle, but we may have to make some exceptions, move some things around to make sure that a particularly important KEP gets in because it's fixing a really nasty performance issue or something, and so we need to let it miss a deadline by 3 days.
Of course,
and that could push the release out. And
Yeah.
we have the ability to make that call without having to deal with our own SIG leadership. They trust me to make that call, or deal with the steering committee.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so in my day job, this is kind of like one of the things I do is I'm a practice lead for and a principal analyst for the AppDev practice, right? And I cover day 0, day 1, day 2 in DevSecOps and build, release, and operations in the CI/CD pipeline. There's a lot of obviously Kubernetes plays a big part in that, right? Especially in all aspects of it, right? One of the things I hear, because I talk to a lot of emerging companies, I think the emerging companies are trying to understand like what they can do, how do they get started, whether they're in their infancy or they're like fully mature, they still struggle, right, along
Always.
the way. So what guidance or advice would you provide to like some of these organizations that are just either maybe just getting started, or even the ones that are mature and trying to understand how to like really accelerate their projects?
I think you shouldn't get too emotionally attached to any decision you make. It can be really easy to feel like territorial about a decision you made about a feature, or a decision you made about the way your organization works, or some plan far in the future, or some decision you made 3 weeks ago, and get like way too emotionally attached, and that can make it difficult to pivot if you have to pivot. It can make it so that you drag it out so long that you can't pivot anymore, and you're stuck with a maybe not so ideal choice that you made. So number one piece of advice would be don't get emotionally attached to features or decisions. Like be prepared to go, nope, that was not right. We need to do something slightly different now. It is okay to admit that you were wrong. It was okay to admit that you didn't have all of the information, you didn't have like the ideal tools or the right people, and you couldn't make the right decision then, but you do maybe have those things now, and you can pivot. It's not embarrassing. Just
I think what I'm hearing is dynamic and fluid, right? Dynamic and fluid.
Yeah,
you have to adjust.
Don't be static about it.
Absolutely.
Don't like. You're not a rock. Like you can move.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing let's pivot a little bit to the conversation around budgets, right? We talk about organizations that are trying to implement new projects. Like when I'm talking to these companies and doing research, a lot of my practice focuses on past, present, and future, right? Which is like past applications, present state, and then future, right? Where things are going. The modernization, of course, is a big trend for a lot of organizations, right? They have to try to modernize. When I think of past, a lot of times I think about those monolithic applications that are moving towards containerization, right? And then future might be things like, I don't know, WebAssembly or serverless or wherever they're going next, right? The two areas of complexity, or I should say the two areas that I hear CIOs talking about that are challenging is complexity and skill gap issues. Is this something that you're experiencing within the Kubernetes SIG and like in the programs and such with skill gap issues?
We have a pretty constantly rotating cast of release team members. We run a shadow application program, right? So because we require so many people to make the project run, we have to constantly try to funnel people into our SIG, and we do that by opening a public application for people to shadow one of the positions on our team. So maybe like 50% of any given team is made up of brand new people.
Okay.
We get treated for the Kubernetes project as kind of a training entry point for contributing elsewhere in the project. Some people don't necessarily believe that that's the best move because the release team is very, very stressful and it requires you to learn a lot in a very short period of time. But I like that it allows us to bring in new people and train them very quickly and then send them somewhere else in the project. So that addresses a skill gap or a resource issue in SIG Docs or SIG Node or SIG Storage or whatever, because they come to us first.
Yeah.
They have to spend 4 months talking to SIG leadership across the project, talking to other contributors across the project, and they get kind of a feel for what they're good at and what another SIG is missing.
Gotcha.
So we get to address it that way, which doesn't really, I don't think that necessarily works in the context of a business because unpaid internships are evil. Like you can't do that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I agree. I mean, although I do think that I like the idea of organizations that allow for that rotation.
Rotations are great.
Because it allows,
especially with juniors, I think that's an incredible thing to be doing.
And I think a lot of times what we see now is many organizations are saying, well, do I really need to hire a new college hire, right? Do I need to hire a junior person? Because, maybe I can have AI do that work. And the reality of it is no.
No, you cannot.
Right, you can't, right? And even worse, if they do, what happens is in 5 years when there's, I need to hire a skilled person,
that skilled person may not exist.
May not exist, right? And like you and I have the rite of passage coming up. Somebody needs to have that rite of passage coming up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure. Most of the shadow applicants we get are students, or they're like very fresh out of college.
Yeah.
The reality is that the Kubernetes project is the second largest open source project in the world behind Linux.
Right.
Being able to put it on your resume is
huge.
Going to make you more money.
Yeah, absolutely.
So college students and fresh grads absolutely love trying to get on the release team for that resume bump, and I personally find it very gratifying to be a part of helping somebody's career journey like that.
Well, it's okay, let's pivot there. So how can new contributors get involved in the Kubernetes project, and whether they're writing code or not?
So number one, watch for the release team shadow application.
Okay.
That usually comes out about 2 or 3 weeks before we start a release cycle. There is one coming up at the end of the year. We will email that out to dev@kubernetes.io, so you can watch that. You can also watch the SIG release channel in our Slack workspace. But if the release team isn't where you think you want to go, you can always come to SIG Docs.
Okay.
You don't have to be a Kubernetes org member to review pull requests for documentation or for technical changes to the website. The website is built on Hugo, so if you know Hugo really well, but you don't know Kubernetes really well, and you want to do some code contributions, you can help improve the Kubernetes website.
Yeah.
If you don't want to write code at all, you can help with the documentation. And you also don't necessarily have to understand Kubernetes super well to be useful there. We always need help with style guide compliance. We always need help reviewing blogs for grammar, that kind of stuff. But if you are technical and you want to write code, there is a new contributor orientation run by SIG ContribX that you should attend. The Kubernetes meeting calendar is public. It's on our website, so you can find those meetings there. But they'll help orient you on the layout of the project.
Yeah.
And if there's a particular area that you really find a lot of happiness in writing code for, like whether it's storage or networking or security or whatever, we have a SIG for that, and they need help because it's an open source project.
Yeah,
so
don't have lots of opportunity.
Yeah,
there's
so
lots
much
of
opportunity.
Yeah.
Like we are the second largest project in the world, but we still need more hands.
Yeah.
For sure. We need more people building stuff. We need more people reviewing stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we, as a project, very much have a philosophy of training people to replace us. I don't want this job forever.
Of course, yeah.
I'm always looking for
Smart.
who is going to replace me when I'm done with this and I take another role in the project. So
super smart.
Yeah, we have a contributor ladder. We want you, and we want to move you up into leadership positions so that we could quit.
Yeah, absolutely. Kat, great having you on. This has been awesome. Great insights.
Thank you.
And exposing the program to the audience is really, really cool. Really appreciate it. And I want to thank you all for watching and being that's tuned into this. We appreciate you being part of the AppDevANGLE community. That wraps up this episode, but we'll be back next Wednesday for another conversation diving into the tools, trends, and talent shaping the future of application development. Whether you're deploying at the edge, building in AI, or modernizing your cloud stack, we've got you covered. Be sure to follow us on social if you have any thoughts, questions, or just want to connect. You can always reach me at pauln@siliconangle.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay building.